My name is Cornell Johnson, and you're here live with me and Lothario Vanish, and you are on the Moral Compass. Welcome to the Moral Compass. My name is Cornell Johnson. I'm joined here live tonight with Lothario Vanish, aka Mayor of Steeler Nation. It hurts me to say that. And my brother Mac, I guess he's aka Governor of Carolina Panther Nation. But I'm just glad to be here with you brothers tonight, man. The title of the show is "The Skin I'm In." We had this show earlier, and I felt like we caught lightning in the bottle. But of course, modern technology, I didn't record it. But we had an awesome conversation. We're going to be short one tonight. Ricardo is not going to be with us tonight, but we're gonna have another show because these guys really went to the meat of this subject, and I want you to know that no, I'm not cognizant of what to wear to match my background, but you know, the mayor of Steeler Nation came on this show with the terrible towel and his jersey on, and you know, even though I really don't feel Dallas Cowboyish, hey, I had to put my Dallas Cowboy jersey on because we're not having that, you know. I'll put my jersey on, so we're not having that. So, Dan, I'm sorry. I didn't let you go ahead of time. You know,
it's all good.
I thought it was an NFL show. But the skin I'm in, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Oh, I think I got this too high. The skin I'm in, the power of pigmentation. Cameo wrote a song. Who's this face in the mirror that I see? Sometimes confused by the double standards of society. If we have truth, we can survive. And for that, our forefathers have died. It should be a moral or a sin if it is according to the skin I'm in. We've had external problems. In 1712, Willie Lynch, a British slave owner from the West Indies, is called in because of the various slave uprisings. And he has been called because the only recourse the slave masters have is to hang the ones that rebel. So Mr. Lynch proposes to the slave masters a system by which to control the slaves. A simple method, if employed, it would keep them in check for 300 years. He says, pit them against each other according to their differences, the old against the young, the tall against the short, the men versus the women, the big plantations against the small plantations, the east side versus the west side, the field workers against those in the big house, the light skin versus the dark skin. And if you employ this system for it, it will create perpetual distrust between the slaves. And so my question is, the opening question tonight for both Daniel and Lothario is Willie Lynch's system still in place, and is it working in 2020?
Oh, Brother Vanish, you want to go and start that one off?
It sounds like the Willie Lynch system is like a mindset. And so in a psychological sense, yeah, you know, you have residual effect from slavery, which is 155 years ago, which in the annals of times is not a very long time ago. So I contend that since this country was built on racism, you know, from the eradication of the Native American, you know, until the enslavement of the African, you've got systematic racism or a system put in place, you know, to control and dehumanize a set of people. And so, yes, it is not quite as overt or as strong as it was back then, because times are changing. They're changing for the better. But, you know, in 2020, you know, that not only the pandemic, but social unrest, you see it flaring its ugly head all the time. So yeah, it's still out there. It's still something that we are part of, even if we're not completely cognizant of it. It is definitely something that is still, you know, within the masses.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. To answer that question about Willie Lynch, because you know, there's many reports even saying if Willie Lynch is real or not. It might have been like a fable, because the system is so good, you can use that to separate any group, any team. It could work in a corporation, it could work in a church. But I think with you know, African Americans, you know, Africans who were taken to America, it was used so well to last so long that, you know, it's a prime example of how that evil a mindset is. But we've been having to face a whole lot of challenges, and it does stem from things that are subconscious. So when people say things like self-hate, you know, people be like, well, you know, I don't hate myself, I love myself, but they don't realize that the certain things that they could think, that's the whole thing, is under their conscious. So it's hard to really address, because we can see it in other people, but how many times we check it in ourselves, to where we might second guess something that comes from a brother or sister, and then you actually catch it, or you just be like, you know, if we see them, if we see one of our own, and we just have to, sometimes we make jokes to be like, oh yeah, that looks like that person I saw on Live 5 News, or this or that or the other. But there might be some recognition of what that Willie Lynch mindset can do to someone, but so many times it is missed and not recognized, and you can only change away from things that you're aware of. So, you know, a lot of things that, especially in the African American community, we talk about closed doors, but never talk to the point of healing. You know, the light versus the dark skin, the way that our elders at different points of times are always seeming to be on a different page from our youth, but that's exploited in a different ways, that to put them against each other. So like Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, back in the days, they really were just two sides of a different coin, but they weren't separate. They just had different angles to get to the ultimate same goal, I believe. You know, they're always trying to do some type of pit against us. And because we're not that power hold in this country, is worked so far. And one of the things that's going to lead to our advancement is making sure we're aware of it, being able to fight against that thing that's so subconscious.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. Y'all guys really hit that up the park. So now we talked about the external problems. So now let's look at the internal problems. Dan touched on it a little bit. The practice of the brown paper bag test may have originated in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's right. I said the brown paper bag test, where there was a substantial third class of free people of color dating from the French colonial area. The test was related to ideas of beauty, in which some people believe that lighter skin and more European features in general were more attractive. From 1900 until about 1950, paper bag parties are said to have taken place in the neighborhoods of major American cities with a high concentration of African Americans. Many churches, fraternities, nightclubs use the brown paper bag principle as a test for entrance. People at these organizations would take a brown paper bag and hold it against a person's skin. If a person was lighter than the bag, they were admitted. People whose skin was not lighter than a brown paper bag were denied entry. Let me see. What y'all think? I'll get in the party? I'm kind of
No.
In the winter. I'm
right on the same boat, man. I'm right on the line now. I'm right on the line.
I just said no. I don't think you get in the back. Hey, come on in the back of this bus.
We could all be outside, right?
We can all be outside. I'm be in the back, but y'all can be a few up.
You ain't going in there without you, King.
The brown paper bag test in African American oral history was a form of racial discrimination practiced within the African American community in the 20th century by comparing an individual's skin tone to the color of a brown paper bag. So the next general question, gentlemen, we're gonna start with you this time, Dan. Is the brown paper bag test still going on today?
Yeah, to a certain degree, it is, because you have to understand, because anything that hits any group of people, it hits African Americans extra hard, because our identity has been diluted taken away from us, and we have to restore that identity. But my thing is, it's human nature, because even if you look at the animal kingdom, I always joke, if you want to know human nature, look at animal nature, because we just do things in a more sophisticated way. And just to give you an example, if you take, I don't care if it's wolves or chimpanzees, when they have their alpha male and alpha female, you'll see that there's other animals who try to either mimic or make their kids look and resemble like that alpha male and alpha female, that group, because, you know, the closer you are to the alpha, the more resources you get, the more protection you get. And those who are in the outskirts just aren't as protected. They could be turned against. They might have their kids taken from them by the alphas. They might, you know, so once again, they'll lose their kids, lose their resources, and lose all forms of safety. So they try to mimic the behaviors and actions that the alpha do. Or you'll see chimpanzees try to stick things around their baby's fur to make them look bigger and healthier, so they won't get picked on, to make them look like the alpha's children. You know, and those type of things that happen as well too. When you think about what people had to do to survive the diaspora by any means, if you see some of those horrible things, and if you have someone who you love or you care for, and to see this situation, it makes sense that they would try to do something to be like, hey, if I can get you to pass, or if you happen to be this skin tone, this might be your ticket to at least staying alive. So once again, as Brother Vander said, as far as it not being that long ago, of course, some of that mindset could continue on until this day.
All right. Brother Vanish, is the brown paper test still going on today? Or the brown
Yes.
bag test still going on today?
Yes, maybe just on the subconscious level, but we see it a lot. You know, part of the problems of, or the horrors of slavery, is that when you enslave people, and I believe that chattel slavery, even though slavery was not like indigenous to, America, there's no place on the earth where chattel slavery, which was the transatlantic slave trade, has been as brutal. And I wonder sometimes, I think maybe because the Europeans, they had to pick people who were the very polar opposite, at least in appearance, than them, so they can dehumanize them. When you steal a person from their land, you cut off all their history, you cut off their language, their truth, you impose your virtues and your values, on a person, and then you're dehumanizing. So you kind of answered the question when you were talking about European. Blacks have been in the 155 years, removed from slavery, and even before then, we have had a Eurocentric style imposed on us. Eurocentric style of beauty. You see it in the commercials, and so when you had the intermingling of races, through slavery, which by far most of it was because it was illegal, a rape system. The offspring of these were kind of hated by both people, but at the same time revered. And so maybe the Europeans took a liking to the light skins because they were closer to them. And so this hate, this irrational hate and fear, it passed down. And you go back to that lynch mentality where you take that, the field hand against the person in the house, and then you impose enemy between those two. And so there's always constant hate when you should be joining together. But because of all the dysfunctionality of the past, you have to kind of recreate yourself. And that's where African Americans have been doing for the last 300-400 years, trying to recreate themselves, making their own history, trying to stay true to their past and the new past over here in the new land. So it still goes on. You see it, like I said, you see it on TV a lot of times. You see it with beauty queens. Vanessa Williams, once, she won the Miss America title back in 1984, I believe. It was asked, I wonder if she won it because, of her skin color. I often wonder if Barack Obama had been as dark as me, would he have won? You've got to appeal to the people in power. And a lot of times, a lot of people feel that a lighter skin tone makes you less threatening, makes you more accepting. This is not maybe, true in our community, but sometimes I believe it's looked at in the communities, that kind of dominate us. And I still think to some point, you still have like a residual effect.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We got a caller I'm gonna call her back right now from the class of '86. Marietta Hickman, who's trying to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Marietta.
Marietta, how you doing?
Oh, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. See, I got your cousin Dan Mack, and I got your classmate Material Vanish on me.
What?
Mm-hmm.
But you said you have a brown paper bag story for us?
Yes, I sure do. When I went to school, I accompanied a friend of mine to a rock party for a certain sorority. She's very fair skinned. And when I got to the door for this party, they told me, asked me if I was a legacy. I said no. And the girl told me, well, your hair is very pretty. And you may have made it in with your hair, but you will pass the brown paper bag test. And at that time, I wasn't familiar with the brown paper bag test. So she said, what is the brown paper bag test? What is that? And she said, your skin is not light enough. It's not lighter than the brown paper bag. So you probably won't make it into the sorority. I suggest you go try the doctor.
Wow.
And that happened to me when I got to state college.
Wow. So your hair was pretty.
Yeah, I had the hair.
But your skin wasn't light enough.
No, that's the first time I had ever heard such thing as the brown paper bag test. I never heard of that. And so what do you mean, brown paper bag? She said, your skin is not lighter than the brown paper bag. You're legacy off. So unless you're a legacy, I don't think you're gonna go off. I should get brown paper.
Wow.
And I said, well, I'm not really interested. My girlfriend, she asked me to come with her. So, I'm coming with her.
Wow.
And I didn't even say I left. I was just so excited. I couldn't believe it. And it still goes on. It still goes on to say not the brown paper bag test, but my children are light, and there are people that refuse to believe that I'm their mother. I've been told them too long.
You're too dark to be their mom.
Unless they said you must be white or Puerto Rican, and I said no, he's 100% black.
Wow.
Yeah, so as of 30 years ago, this brown paper bag thing was still going on, At least it happened to me.
I'm so glad you called me and shared that story. And you're my first caller, and you're my best friend. So I'm so glad you called me and shared that story, Marietta. But yeah, that's amazing. It's utterly amazing.
Tell my cousin I said hello.
Yeah. A person with darker skin, we still choose it differently at times because our skin is darker.
Wow.
That's just the truth. So I just want to share that with you. Actually, what's still going on.
Thank you
I
so
can
much.
tell you at least as of 30 years ago when I went to school, it was.
Wow. Wow.
And I never heard of it. I had no idea what that was. She told me what it's called.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, my dear friend, for calling in and sharing that with us.
You're so very welcome.
But
all of you here.
Yeah, your cousin said tell you hi.
Tell them hello. Tell them how I'm on the way to talk tonight.
All right, well, we'll see you when you get here.
Okay, I will tell you when I get there.
All right, my friend.
Okay, all right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, all right. That's amazing that Marietta experienced that's amazing. I had never heard about it until I did the research on it. But that's amazing that she experienced that. Daniel, Carolina Panther, my friend, world-renowned trainer. You sent me a meme about a week and a half ago with the White House as the backdrop and makeshift campaign signs bearing the names of unarmed Black citizens that have been killed by the police. Explain to me, what kind of symbolism does this year's election take on if, in fact, we are voting because of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Oscar Grant, Stephen Clark, Eric Garner, or Anthony Hill?
Well, to me, the biggest thing, it just speaks volumes about some of the things we already talked about. If in a country that would allow those type killings to happen and there be no recourse, or they just look at it as being business as usual, cost of doing business in America, we would have to make a change with that. But the thing is that a lot of people, the reason you have a phrase like Black Lives Matter having to be said is because subconsciously with this country, they didn't have to matter. Okay, when you have founders who are white men from Europe, and there's no people of color, there's no women in the room, then it means that even though these words, as beautiful as a concept, it wasn't put into reality for us. So the thing is, when we do have police who do no-knock warrants when somebody gets killed, it's, well, cost of doing business. Or when we have a situation where a cop fears for their life and they shoot a man in a car who says that I'm just reaching, who basically does everything it's supposed to do, as in the Philando Castile, then it's like, well, it's a tough job. And these things, remember, this is to protect and serve the community and set up by the government, but we're not policing that. So when these things happen, those who be set to hold people accountable, that's determined by the people that we elect. So on the government level, and then the federal level is going to make sure that the states just won't start going too far out. Even though people talk about state rights, you just can't have complete anarchy. And the federal government plays a role in that too. So to me, if you've never if you've never looked at anything before, if you want to know one surefire thing, is it going to cure everything? No, because Martin Luther King had a great quote that I love, saying that the law can't stop a man from hating me, but it might prevent him from lynching me. And he says, I'm fine with that. So it's not like do we need to be kumbaya and everybody peaceful? It's a dream, it's an ideal, but is it reality? No, but the reality is we can have a country of laws and consequences to prevent and deter that type of behavior from happening in the future. We have not had that at the level we've needed for this whole country's existence, but it's been on display way more in the last few years.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. The theory of man. I didn't announce you earlier. You threw me off with that. My pastor.
Are you having pains again? You look like every time you look at him, you just
look at that steel jersey and the father. High school graduate class of 1986, studied at South Carolina State political science, 23 years in the United States Air Force, retired Master Sergeant in 2014, Bachelor of Science in Human Resources and Management 2012 from Clark University, Master degree in Christian Ministry 2019 from Wayland Baptist University, the mayor of Steel Nation, and current Alpha Male lone. Letherial Vanish, let me ask you this question. In his debate with Senator Kamala Harris, when asked if Breonna Taylor got justice, Mike Pence showed a thimble full of sympathy, but quickly said he has faith in the justice system because of his journey. Because of his journey, rather, and how he views the world. Could Mike Pence ever see America the way we do? And if not, how could you or I ever expect representation on that level? How could Mike Pence have so much faith in the justice system?
Probably so because the justice system has benefited the people that look like him. You know, sometimes you can hear the answer right in the question, whether it's his story as in history. That doesn't mean factual acts, really happened, or justice, meaning just us. When you're talking about the law, in order for him to be able to see the perspective of me, you have to put yourself in my shoes. You've got to humble yourself and be able to look at my perspective, truly strip your values, look at it from my point of view, wearing my shoes. And 9 times out of 10, no matter who you are, you will have a different opinion of what you think. So when you have minorities that are simply vying for the right to just be treated like everyone else, people look at the Black Lives Matter we were talking about early. It is an ideology that Black lives have not mattered. You have unarmed Black men who are getting killed by police. So Black men, yes, maybe the police shoot more white men, but you got to remember that Caucasians outnumber African Americans almost 4-5 to 1. So when you have unarmed people who are getting killed, that is alarming, and that needs to be looked at, because racism it touches every fabric of society, every facet of society. So why would it not touch police brutality? You have to look at it from the perspective of the other people, and you have to be willing to talk. So with somebody like Pence, who works for his boss, who is not known as a man of humbleness or humility, that is what you initially have to do in order to see another person's point of view. And frankly, a lot of times these people have never had to. When you become president of the United States as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male, you don't have to transcend through the Black community or the Hispanic community or the Native Americans or Asians to get there. Barack Obama did, and that's an amazing, whether you agree with his politics or not, the fact that he was able to transcend a world, not just from his own community, Black community, or a biracial look, but he was able to reach out and converse with all people. And that's something that I don't think this administration has really doing it. You don't see any minorities in their cabinet members, save one. Out of the 400 federal judges that he's appointed, I think maybe one man of color, as far as like African American, and I'm not even sure if he's Black. So my whole point is, when you have people who are your judges, who rule over you, who have a say in your life, who can make you a legalized slave per the 13th Amendment, it helps to be very diversified and reflective of the society that you live in. And this administration, I don't think has done that. And don't get me wrong, the answer isn't in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, because frankly, the American political system has failed people of minorities and people of color. So, and you've got to, who's ever in there, you've got to hold them accountable, not just empty promises, not, suggestions at the end of a campaign, or I'll tell you once I'm elected. You've got to hold them accountable. And you see that, as a starting point, but, voting is just a small part of it. You definitely have to do it, in my personal opinion, because you have to work within the system and out the system. But you've got to start. You've got to start pushing forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the advantage. Dan, you have anything you want to say on that, or?
No, I think that was just very well said about it. But like I said, it's about holding people accountable, but just having to understand that, look, between the name, and this is beyond political to me, beyond party, but just when you think about the words progress, change, there's a lot of people who are against progress, change, and even by the term conservative, and like beyond political, because it blankets so much more. Yeah, you have political conservatives that used to think it was like conservative of resources, but a lot of that is also conserving of certain mindsets that are common now. They don't want to see that particular change. So, like as he was saying, bigger than Democratic and Republican, it's about a mindset of that type of equality that we're looking for, that we need to obtain.
Absolutely. 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 Dan, this is the last question of the night. All our great achievements, hidden history, and yet the wherewithal to survive. Mary McLeod Bethune selling sweet potato pies to build Bethune Cookman College. Why? Because of our skin color, do people still treat us like this is not our America too?
Because technically it wasn't supposed to be. You can't. Dave Chappelle said in I can't even remember which stand-up special. He's had so many recently, but he said us getting free was not part of the plan. Yeah, that was not part of the plan. So it's just one of those things. It's almost like the Middle East is always going to be in torment, even if you go in and invade. We don't really want to technically run their government, but whoever's put in place, it always seems there's some type of anarchy because there's a void left. So instead of this void, we're left here in this country. It's basically like somebody getting kidnapped, put into a house, but then they have to actually start to live in a house and function from there, but they're disconnected from everything they've been with. They've have known, and they have to start over new. But we're talking about an entire culture. And until someone's able to really grasp that, then you won't understand the confusion that's going on with our people and why these things are all coming down on us. And still through that, we've had successes, we've strived, we've been able to build happy families and homes, but we're still not quite equal. There's still some people who want to take that piece and those goals away from us. So ultimately, that's why when you look at how America was formed, and there's many things that have happened that made it great, but was that the initial intention? No. So you still have people who still rail against that. Do I know how to go against that? People are going to be people. So that's a whole different question. But one way to advance from it is to recognize what's happening. And then once you know what that problem is, we can all as individuals start to address it and how it affects us in our own lives.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. We got a couple messages here. We had Bruce Black. I guess he saw Bruce Poole. He saw us with these jerseys on, Lothario, and he says Jets, baby. I think Lloyd are the only Jets fans I know.
Get him on the next podcast because he's the bravest brother I know. So he's got to be a fighter. Still drag them up, man.
Marietta Grant says hello. She sent a message in, and then we have Leander Palmer, my brother from Pittsfield, South Carolina.
Western United.
That's it. That's it. He says we're free, but we're still slaves. He said we do not own anything. Wow. 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 And I think that we're older now and we've learned. And I remember one time that I used to have the fresh Jordans. They were like $75 back when we were in high school in 86, So that's kind of telling my age. But I thought I had to have the new gear that came out and everything. And I've lived to change that feeling. And I think that a part of being recognized is economic empowerment. Also, I think economic empowerment is big, and I think we need to be more. We need to be more gatherers than consumers. More gatherers than consumers. But brothers, and before I let y'all go, man, because you guys have been so dynamic tonight. Only problem I got is Lothario with that jersey on. But you've been dynamic tonight. But I want to ask one more question, man. How critical is this election? How critical would you say is this election?
Personally, I think it's very critical. I think to me, Americans need to be inclusive. They need to, like you were talking about that Constitution. The Constitution it was written, but it wasn't written for most people. You know, it was written for wealthy Anglo-Saxon Protestant males that were landowners and were rich. So all the rest of the minorities, it wasn't written. It's a beautiful piece of paper, but until it's enacted in terms of practice for all people, you know, regardless of your creed, color, religion, sex, gender, that is the promise of America. And the people who don't think that they don't want anything extra. All they want is achieve that American dream and not be set back because they're a minority. So if you contend that the present administration has not been inclusive, or that they're suppressing your rights, or that they're not looking out for your best interests, then it would behoove you, in my personal opinion, that you go out and you make a change. You know, like I said, you have to work within the system and out of the system. A vote just is not a cure or a fix at all. You vote at the state and local level, and you vote for people who are really after that American dream, as you were taught in your social studies class way back in the 5th grade. So yeah, if you don't think the system is working for you, or you think the system is not what it should be, then I think your vote is very critical, because a change has to come if things are to get better.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, sir. Dan?
Yeah, as far as just to kind of piggyback off that as well too, it's once again, you have to go to the source of it, because like I said, with the Constitution, I always compare it to, if you have a marriage where the husband and wife, before they get married, they're practicing infidelity, they're doing things that are self-destructive, destructive to others, and then you have a union in a church in front of a priest, and the ceremony looks as sanctuous as ever, but there's still those things in the background going on. There's a time that it would come to the forefront and actually ruin that union. So the union is, like you said, it looks good. They had the wedding and everything else, but it's chaos in the background. So I feel it's just at a point where America, the chaos is caught up with it. And as we start to address it, we can fix it if we choose to. Voting is just a big piece of that, but it's just a piece. It's not going to cure everything. So after you cast your ballot, be proud of that. But it's going to be take more work between us as individuals, families, communities, and a government, and so on. But yeah, I think we're just starting to address our roots and then really decide how we're going to move on from here, because what it was before is not working.
Thank you, brother. And this is a critical election. I do agree. We've got to get out and vote. We want parity back in the United States, and we can't take another 4 years. Take another 4 years. 2020 has been a rough year. It's been a rough year. And we've seen some things in 2020, the bad old days, trying to rear their head, and things probably we thought we'd never see, you know, just speechless about some of the things we see. But we definitely need to get out and vote. I'm just thankful to have you, Lothario, and you, Dan, brother Dan, on the show. And hey, man, you know y'all going to be back. Absolutely. You know, you're going to be back. Absolutely going to be back. I appreciate you guys for coming, and we're going to leave you with this African proverb tonight. An African proverb says that the African race is a rubber ball. The harder you dash it to the ground, the higher it will rise. And so don't feel discouraged if you've been dashed to the ground, because we've all been dashed to the ground, but just prepare to rise. Just prepare to rise. And Maya Angelou said, and still I rise.
Still I rise.
Still I rise.
Decision to rise. As long as you make that decision to rise every day.
Every day. There you go.
Every day. So we thank you for tuning in tonight to the Moral Compass. Thank Lothario Vance and Dan Mack. I'm Cornell Johnson. Go Dallas Cowboys. Have a wonderful night.
All right, there, Kings. Work on your music, homie. You
don't like my music?
You need the music from Coming to America with the drums in the background. You're doing flowers in your background, man. You're the Black King. You're the Black King.
What kind of music, huh?
I know you're trying to avoid those copyrights, but you got
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Brothers.
Be well, man. Be safe.
All right, you too, brother.
Everybody.
All right.